most mask mandates in Ontario are lifting on Monday. So that's just as kids head back to class after their March break. So I want to gauge your feelings on this. What's everyone thinking?
Oh, the timing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it just seems like, particularly this provincial government has the worst sense of timing.
Yeah.
Like, everyone knows how many people are going to be traveling during this. It just seems like we're so close to things, being a little bit safer. I mean, and some would argue we're already there, but I don't know. I talked to Jaya about it, and I just said, like, listen, we want you to continue to wear it in the classroom, but you're going to have to make this decision for yourself.
Right.
And I said, you have, an immunocompromised friend. You have your grandparents that you love seeing who are more vulnerable. So I want you to make the decision. And he said, I understand, Mummy. Now, what that will mean on Monday worries me a bit, because I think, like, what will be the impact if he's the only one in the classroom who's wearing one? So I'm just going to go to Joanne on Facebook, who says, I'm really looking forward to going face naked. That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah. I'll have one in my bag for a while, just in case, but I'm not planning on being in any particularly crowded places. As for my kids, very much looking forward to letting them see smiles again. And if you're wearing a mask still, I'll smile at you too.
Oh,
well,
that's a
very
nice
sweet
sentiment. I like that.
Well, let's hope.
Joanne, I would love to ask Joanne the question. I think what I think she's saying is everyone's going to have to now judge for themselves what they deem to be a risky situation for them and their family, or what they no longer deem to be a risky situation. But the one thing we have been hearing across the board since the beginning of the pandemic, especially at this stage, is if it's a crowded indoor space with questionable ventilation, that's going to perhaps be higher risk for some people. And I would argue, Joanne, that some classrooms are exactly that. I mean, if you've got 28 kids in a crowded classroom, maybe it's an older school, maybe it doesn't have great ventilation, maybe it doesn't have windows. I very much understand parents who are still really nervous. Like you said, Cyn, A, the timing, and B, is that no longer a high-risk situation? And every parent is going to have to decide for themselves.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky that Marquez's school has decided they are keeping the masks in place for at least one more month. She has a break next month. And I have to say, I was very relieved that the school made the call.
Yeah.
Having said that, if the school made the opposite call, I would have asked Marquez to keep her mask on. Not necessarily for just her safety. We've all had COVID. She's double vaxxed. We're triple vaxxed. It's actually because we do continue to see her grandparents. And speaking of grandparents, my parents are boosted. But now, looks like the experts are saying that third dose for them is now starting to do this. So if Marqueza is exposed, and maybe she gets it again, it's less of a concern for me. It's not great, but it's more of a concern if my parents have waning immunity all at the same time. So I think for us, it's judging every situation to figure out risk. And I think a lot of parents are really stressed about that, because how do you make the call?
I don't blame them, especially because we know masks cut down the risk of transmission, something like 85%. And it's just such an easy thing to do. And it's become habitual now. Like I always have it in my fanny pack, or in my coat pocket. It's just, I think I will continue to put it on for the month of March.
Oh, same.
But I must admit, like in places—
Everywhere, Jess?
I will say in places that don't have any vaccine mandates in place. But in crowded, I don't really go to crowded places, but if I found myself in a place and I had no idea how many people were vaccinated, or rather, if I found myself in a place where I knew everyone was triple vaxxed, I think I would feel comfortable, because the risk is very, very small. But it's you mentioned judgment, and what I found myself thinking, I'm sure, I don't know if you guys found yourselves in this sort of situation, particularly in February, I felt, in grocery stores or even on public transit, where there'd just be someone with no mask. And I found myself, like, the rage and the anger, just like, it's so easy to do. It's the rule. Just put on the mask. But and no one said anything, like no staff, because I think staff are just, they haven't given up, but it's just simply, I feel for them not having to enforce that rule. But I'm gonna have to do a switchover coming up. And, after Monday, if I'm in my grocery store and I see people without masks, I'm going to have to check myself. They're not doing anything wrong, according to the Ontario government, right? That's
it's a big mind shift.
Yeah.
It's like been 2 years. We're so used to it. You're for sure, Jess. Like that is that is like a very real change of experience that we're all gonna have to reacclimate ourselves to. I do think though that going forward, for me personally, and we talked about this before, there were many parts in East Asia that were like very mask ordinary before COVID, because of course of what happened with Asia and SARS. And so I think I'm going to be living a mask life permanently from now on. I'll never go on an airplane without a mask. I'll probably always go to a grocery store and wear a mask. I don't think I'll ever get into an elevator without wearing a mask. Not just when this pandemic is declared over, but like forever. Yeah. And I don't know that that's a bad thing. And again, it's very normal in other parts of the world and was prior to COVID.
But what's happening here that's different is that there has been a politicization about masks before. We have to look no further than our own backyard or even south of the border. And that's maybe where things are a little different here, Lainey, I would argue, because once masks come off, let's say your kid is the only kid in class wearing a mask, like bullying.
This is my worry.
You know, like I do wonder what's going to happen for the one or the two or the three people.
The flip side of that, Mel and I obviously share the exact same concern. But if I try to take off my emotional hat and I imagine that there are, like, it's easy for me to say because my son had never had any problem wearing a mask. In fact, sometimes I'd pick him up and I'd be talking to him for a bit. I'd be like, you can take off your mask now, you know? I'd have to remind him. He wore it with ease. But probably that's not the story. I know that's not the story for all kids that are out there. Like some, you know, maybe who were harder of hearing, who were relying on reading lips, they've been impacted. People who, had anxiety issues. Like so I know from a parental perspective, you have many different lenses through which to see this. I just think for those, if there was an ease with your child, I think it is a great thing. We learned this, like Lainey, I remember early on in the pandemic talking about how like the gesture of wearing a mask is actually it's a gesture of kindness.
Yes.
Right? And we have to really think about this with thoughtfulness.
Yeah. I just want to add in for the parents of littles who are under 5 who can't get vaccinated, they're in a whole other ballpark, right? Like their kids can't get vaccinated. And I know that I've gotten so many DMs from those parents who are petrified because they want to many of them keep masks on their kids because they're not protected at all. So I just want to acknowledge them as well.